This program is brought to you by 3C TV. Like what you learned? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up on the latest 3C TV programs.
And it's great to be here with all of you. The Academic Senate is really pleased to be able to participate in this kind of a dialogue where we can talk about how to better serve our students who are also veterans. So just a show of hands, faculty in the room? Great. If you're a counselor, keep your hand up. Oh, wow. Just about everybody that's here. Administrators? Okay. Good. Some staff folks that help support everybody? Awesome, great. Students? Aren't we all students? Well, it's great when we have students here. So you are... I'm a certified official, but I'm also a student. Oh, great. Excellent. Okay. Well, we hope we have a little bit of something for everyone as we work through the material that we have. And as Barbara mentioned, there will be some information presented in the first breakout that will continue into the second one, and we're hoping to be able to have quite a long conversation about what these options are that we might employ at the colleges to recognize prior learning and possibly even assess prior learning to assist students who are veterans. So I'm going to let Dolores begin our presentation. I'm going to work the slides, and we're going to get started.
So hi, proud granddaughter and niece of veterans in 3 services. So when I discussed possibly going into the Navy after high school, my grandfather threatened to disown me if I did because he was proud Army, even at that time, final posting at Fort Ord. So what we wanted to talk about a little bit is what the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges has been doing thus far regarding veterans. And I didn't want to show you everything we've done because, goodness gracious, we go back into the 90s looking at resolutions and things like that, actually right after the Gulf War. But just some of the most recent things that the Academic Senate has been doing, and then some things to help faculty and administrators and staff going forward that the Senate is working on and hopefully going to assist in terms of providing some kind of experiential credit or different things like that. I did notice, how many non-counseling faculty in here? Just a few. And how many of the counselors or the non-counseling faculty that raised their hands are support services as opposed to in-classroom? Yeah, we have finals next week at my campus. And I know that a lot of other campuses do. I actually missed my last day of class today, so I have a sense that that's part of the reason that we're not seeing as many classroom instructional faculty as we normally would, so hopefully we can talk to FAC about changing the date one of these days. So just a few, I know, well, you know, we can try and persuade. So a few things that we've done in the past. In the fall 2011 plenary session, we had a keynote speaker. That session actually fell right on Veterans Day, and we had a keynote speaker about veterans returning and what the community colleges could do to help them, and out of that actually came some resolutions that we'll see on the next slide. The Vocational Education Leadership Institutes, which we've sponsored for the last decade plus, have typically had some component regarding veterans in the last 5 or 6 years, because so many of our veterans that come back do go into vocational programs, Occ-Ed. They come back with skills that assist them in those areas, and so we've seen a lot of veterans go into those programs, and so we've tried to target that group. I actually presented with Terrence Nelson at the Voc-Ed Institute in 2011-12. Down in Southern California with a group of students, student veterans, who came in to talk about some of the experiences they had had, and we did quite a whole strand at that particular Voc-Ed Institute. We've had rostrum articles. The rostrum is our publication that comes out typically 4 times a year, specifically about helping veteran students, and one of the most important, this one from last year, was about talking to faculty about ways that credit could be awarded for military service. And I'm going to talk specifically about what what we already have on the books to do that, and then what we can look at, and part of that, the main part of that will actually fall to the ACE folks to talk about. So next slide. Thank you. So resolutions most recently, right after the post-9/11 GI Bill, Veterans Financial Aid. This one that came out of the plenary session about academic credit for veterans and military service members, and that was what the rostrum article directly affected. And then we're in the process of actually writing a paper on credit by exam. It is in process right now. I have seen a very rough outline. We're hoping that by the fall plenary session in 2014, it'll be ready to go. And that includes quite a bit on military credit and different things that the Academic Senate would be supporting or hopefully putting forward to assist veteran students with receiving credit for those things or for their experiences. One of the most, for me, just mind-boggling ideas was that when Terrence and I presented, one of his students had been an infantryman, and he talked about the fact that he had come back after 4 years and he had done an assessment of skills of what he was qualified to do. And his various companions that had done it all did their tests, and his came up that he had achieved no skill level that was worthy of anything. He had absolutely nothing that would help him from his 4 years of experience. And it was like, how is that possible? I mean, you must have something that somehow counts. So that's part of what really has sparked a lot of this. And we'll see some of that come up in the credit by exam paper as it goes forward. So look for that after the fall plenary session next year. Hopefully it'll be finished by then. So the main device that Academic Senate, or that academic faculty have been using to grant any kind of credit outside of the typical exams, AP, CLEP, IB, those sorts of things, is credit by exam. And this is actually in Title V. Credit by exam is granted to any student who passes an examination satisfactorily in a subject area. I'm a historian, not US history, Barbara, European history. I teach both. I'm a Europeanist by trade. I'm a Russianist by trade, so I'm a military historian because there's no choice. If you're a Russianist, you have to know about the military. You don't have a choice. But one of the keys about credit by exam is that the idea is that it's an examination of skills or knowledge that the student previously has possessed, and they enroll in the course section, they pay up to the full price of the class, and then they're taking an exam created by the faculty to prove that they actually have those skills, and they're granted the credit for that if they pass the exam. And there are a lot of problems with this particular structure the way it currently exists. The governing board says that we can do this. It can only be granted to a student who's registered at the college, which means they have to pay all their registration fees, their application fee, all of that. They have to be in good standing, and it has to be a course listed in the catalog of the community college. So I went back to my catalog a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I wonder what we offer by, what we give for credit by exam, and we have the whole chart. What do you get for AP? What do you get for CLEP? What do you get for all these? And there are tons of classes. We have 4 classes that you can get credit for in credit by exam, and they're all in geography. How is that useful? My geography faculty has the office next to me. I'm like, how is this useful? And she's like, it's for our GIS program. It's specifically students who have taken geographic information systems classes, and they can already do this. So not very helpful. The second part of this, which is also in Title V, and this is sort of the main part, and that's in the next slide, is that the faculty determine how this works. They determine whether or not they determine the examination, they grade the examination, they determine if mastery has been approved or has been achieved, and they can actually choose to accept an examination from another college but are not required to do so. So even if a student took an exam at my sister college, my faculty would not necessarily be required to accept that. And that's problematic, because if you have a student coming from a different institution that has taken and successfully passed an examination for a course by credit by exam, you can, as a faculty member, deny that student that credit. The other issue that has come up with this is that it might seem like this is a pretty easy thing to do. Oh, we'll just give them the final exam and see if they pass. But it does require the faculty member to then grade the final exam. And in some cases, the faculty, we don't, for example, offer proctoring services other than for our students who are qualified for additional time. There are all kinds of issues with that. So the faculty would need to proctor the exam. That takes time. They'd need to grade it. That takes time. There's no compensation for that. And so some faculty will not do it because of the compensation issue. So that's problematic as well. So that's what's currently on the books in Title V as an alternative to, or as a form of receiving credit. And there are some real concerns over alternative forms of credit, and ACE will be talking about a lot of these, but these are concerns that have been raised at various discussions and debates around the state. The main one, of course, is the faculty primacy over the curriculum. Who is going to decide whether or not these students have achieved mastery? Should it be an outside regulating body? Should it be an outside for-profit body? Who should it be? In California, under Title V in AB 1725, which was passed back in 1988, faculty have primacy over curriculum and grading and all of those policies. And so that's a very big concern that has been expressed at a variety of different venues over the last few years. There's also a lack of information about different bodies awarding alternative credit and awarding military credit. We were talking earlier when I was talking to Mary Beth and Michelle about the fact that I have a couple slides at the very end about some of the concerns faculty have, because as a classroom faculty member, I am one of the few people on my campus, I may be the only one outside of our Veterans Resource Center, that's ever looked at the ACE toolkit about things that you can use to help you in class. And that's just because of the position that I hold on campus. And so for our instructional faculty that are in the classrooms, a lot of times they have no idea about any of this. They've never heard of any of it. They don't know what's going on. They don't even know if they have veterans in their classes. I can't tell you how many faculty I've had say, well, we don't have any veterans here. We have 800 veterans between Foothill and De Anza. How do you not have a veteran in your class? They may not self-identify. They may not view you as a faculty member who's veteran-friendly, and so they don't want to identify. And, you know, I hate to say it, but faculty kind of have a reputation for being liberal. And a lot of times my veterans are sort of scared, oh, well, you'll hate me because I'm ex-military. No, I won't. I'm thrilled you're back. You know, I'm proud that you made it back. I'm not angry at you. So I think that's a really important point, that faculty in a lot of cases just don't have information about this. They just don't know. And we need to talk about how evaluation is going to happen at the community colleges prior to awarding of credit. And that's one of the things that I know Mary Beth and Michelle and Chris are going to address. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but that was one of the major concerns that's been addressed. So there's some problems with credit by exam that we have already identified. One of the major ones is that credit by exam credit is designated on your transcript if you're a student. And so it is potentially easy for another college to deny you that credit. With that, the acceptance of credit by exam units varies from institution to institution. I spoke with my articulation officer, who happens to be a fairly good one, which is really a nice thing. And I asked her about that. I was like, how often do our students have their credit by exam units denied? She said, for the 4 classes we offer? Oh. It's a good point. So how often do they have it? And she actually said that we haven't had anyone denied in the last 2 years, but previously when we had a lot more classes that were credit by exam, because we used to have a significant number in computer information systems before we eliminated that program, she said they were denied somewhere between 40 and 50% of the time for transfer. And so at that point, the student has gone through all of the steps and then not gotten the credit, which doesn't make sense. And this might impact the associate degrees for transfer, which I know all of the counselors out here are familiar with. Yes, please nod your heads vigorously. Okay, thank you. The associate degrees for transfer, which have become a major part of our world, do have a very limited number of units. They have a very strict set of requirements, and so there are some concerns that that might raise problems. I spoke with Bernie about that specifically on Tuesday, and she said, well, we haven't had any problems with it yet, but again, we don't have a geography ADT, and we only have 4 classes that we offer credit for exam. But other colleges might have more problems with that, depending on how welcoming they are. Now, she did say that in theory, they should be accepted, but in reality, you know perfectly well that our partners in the public education system in California don't always play by the same rules. And so that could be problematic as well. And this one, the issue with financial aid and the concerns regarding the number of units you can have, if you have a student that comes back and is awarded military credit or receives units, and all of a sudden finds out that they're not going to receive federal financial aid because they've gone over their unit total, that's going to be really problematic. And I can tell you right now, as an instructional faculty member, there are probably half a dozen of us on our campus that are even aware of that particular concern. That's not something that's widely known or widely spread. And Stephanie and I talked about that, Dan and I talked about that. I mean, this is a major issue that we have to deal with our students. I'm usually not this monotone. I'm sorry, I'm trying to not get a cold because I have finals next week. So some of the areas for the Academic Senate that we're looking forward to taking forward and to talking about and potentially doing plenary breakout sessions on are other things. Training for instructional and classroom faculty specifically, the toolkit that ACE has is a very good starting point, but scenario-based things. We just had an episode earlier this quarter at my campus where a veteran student became increasingly annoyed because the student next to him was texting and he had his phone volume turned on, so it was going don't even get me started. And the student asked, he was sitting in the very back of the classroom, as a lot of my veteran students do, and he asked, this was not in my class, this was in another class in social sciences, he asked the student to stop texting, and the student refused. And he asked again, and the student refused, and the third time, he grabbed the phone and threw it against the chalkboard. Not the response that would typically happen. Most students would just get up and walk out or would be annoyed or whatever. The classroom faculty freaked out because she had never had anything like that happen. She called 911 from the classroom phone. She called our dean of students. The police showed up. They put part of the building in lockdown because they thought there was a violent offender. I mean, that kind of thing, if you have a veteran trained or a faculty member that's been trained in some of those issues, probably would have been solved early on without that ever coming to that point. So that's a really important thing going forward that I think the Senate needs to focus on. At our plenary sessions in particular and our curriculum institutes, the majority of our faculty, and Beth, you would agree with this, are classroom faculty. They don't have any of these trainings. So these are the kinds of things that I think we would like to focus on going forward. The benefits from having classroom, I would take a whole class of vets any day of the week. They turn their work in on time, they show up on time, they don't talk generally unless I ask them to. They're fabulous. I would take my vets any day of the week. And the benefits of that are much higher, in my mind, than the concerns because I sort of know what I'm doing because I've had a lot of that training. But there are concerns. And I think a number of our students on the panel today addressed those, that they were going to intimidate the rest of the class, that no one was going to talk. One of my veterans came up to me and said, I had 2 people today ask me how many people I killed. Yeah. Really? Really? Is that really what you're going to ask? And he's, pretty self-identifiable. He's all tatted up. He's got his unit number and everything tattooed on him. Okay, makes sense. I can see why people would recognize you as a vet, but probably something you need to deal with. So we're going to definitely want to talk about that and the information regarding campus-wide resources, which I know I don't need to go into. We've got a really good Veterans Resource Center, and I know that a lot of you do as well. Veteran-friendly campuses and the role of faculty outside of student services. Barbara and I talked about this just yesterday, that most of the focus at any veterans event, and certainly at the first FACT Summit, was all student services. Support services. There was nothing for instructional faculty. So going forward, last year was much more. There was much more, and this year there is as well. So I think going forward, the Senate would probably enjoy taking that up and being involved with that at an even greater involvement than we have this year. And then the last part, the preparation for the classroom faculty. I teach history. I teach European history in the 20th century. I show a lot of war video. I don't have a choice, really. I tell my veterans that have self-identified before I show it. And they leave in a lot of cases. It's violent. You watch Pearl Harbor video. You watch, I show stills of the Battle of Verdun. It's really, really hard for a lot of them, and especially the ones that have just come back. My fellow faculty, in some cases, don't have any idea about that. And so the more education we can provide for our faculty about helping with that, the self-identification of veterans, what I started doing is I pass out cards at the beginning of the quarter and I ask them what will help me help them. What will be the best thing that I can do for you to help you with this class? If it's talk slowly, if it's make sure I write on the board, if it's be available in the evening because I prefer to email, whatever. And I have had more veterans self-identify that way than in any other way because they don't have to say it out loud. They just send me in a card and it says, I'm a veteran and I may miss these days. It's been, terrific as far as that goes. I've developed a reputation apparently for being veteran friendly on my campus, which is great. because maybe it'll lead to that all-veterans class that I so desperately hope will happen. They will all be on time, they will all turn in their work, and they won't be texting on their phone. I can only hope that that will happen. The frustrations regarding behaviors, like I said, I can't even tell you how many of them come up to me and are like, somebody in the back was looking at their computer, and they were on Facebook. I know. I was on Facebook on the break. I totally get it. No, but they really, that's really, really important. And like I said, the episode that we had earlier this year was really scary in a lot of levels and shouldn't have happened. And we need to work on that. Benefits issues and accommodations and assistance. I can't tell you how many vets have come up to me after weeks in my class and say, you know, is there a way I could get tested? I think I might not be able to concentrate very well. Or I can't work in this, you know, I'm taking an online class and I have a really hard time looking at the screen for any period of time. Yeah, let's get you tested. Let me recommend things, that sort of thing. And I think that unfortunately, because faculty tend to be sort of in their cubicles and they tend to be limited, they don't get a chance necessarily to go outside and do that. We have a big Veterans Day celebration on our campus. The majority of the faculty that show up are our counselors. You know, Russell, we just don't have a lot of classroom faculty that turn up. So I'm calling out because I know people in here, and one of my top counselors and disabled student services people is here, and he's, you know, a godsend for our whole program. But so those are different things that the Academic Senate is definitely going to be looking at going forward, working on articles and working on breakouts for plenary sessions and things like that to help expand that. And the awarding of military credit, the possibility of military credit, and how we can do that on our campuses without sacrificing the primacy of faculty in curriculum and in testing and in those things is something that we definitely need to look at and we need to talk to our ACE colleagues about, and I know that they're going to present on that, so I'm not going to go much further than to say thank you, and thank you for including the Academic Senate in this.
Just a quick question while they get set up. How many of you have a mechanism where the veterans are identified for the teacher ahead of time in the class? Because my campus does that. It's marked actually on the roster. So I know ahead of time who the veterans are in my class, and that is a great, yeah, really a nice heads up. So some. It comes through the application process and when the roster is created.
Oh, maybe. Or maybe the Veterans Resource Center does it as well.
Yeah. Yes. Just one sec so I can hear the question.
More schools don't do that is because there's always been an ongoing debate about FERPA. You know, it's like calling out veterans, you know, without asking their permission can be kind of problematic.
So let me just repeat the question for the video and for anybody else who did not hear that. There are other colleges that may be interested in providing that information, but they're reluctant to because of FERPA and how much information can be divulged about students. I think that that's a good question. It's certainly a good question for the campus to have about the pros and cons of that. Are there more benefits to having that information ahead of time than there are hindrances? And if it's within the educational community, we share a lot of information that would bump up against FERPA perhaps. So just in the broader context, that would be great to have that conversation. Yes, in the back?
Just real quick, Cerritos College accommodate the FERPA.
Great, thank you. Cerritos College has a number of ways that they accommodate the FERPA requirements, and if you want more information about that, you need to contact Cerritos College. That's just the message for the video.
Thank you. And remember what categories you said you were in earlier when Beth asked you, because you will be tested on that, not too much more into the workshop. So what we want to do now is we want to get you started thinking about what we call showstoppers. But first we're going to give you a little bit about what the agenda is, so click forward. Michelle's going to give you a quick overview of ACE. Chris, our field national coordinator extraordinaire, is going to talk to you about the review, and then we'll have a little bit of time left at the end to talk about, once you understand the review, how you might be mapping that to particular degree programs, and if you're already doing it, how you might be doing more of that. So Dolores talked a bit about some of the concerns with the CBE, so we thought we would look at, just in general, credit for prior learning and what the showstoppers might be. So you can do a shout out. Just think about credit for prior learning in general at your campus, and maybe think about military credit, whether it's training and occupations. What do you see as showstoppers? What are the things that get in the way of you doing it at all, or doing more of it, or doing it the way you'd like to do it? Shout out. Yes, back there.
College. As we were talking about granting credit for students and how the number of units will impact financial aid, we also need to be aware, talking about prior credit, that as a result of the State Student Success Initiative, we are being encouraged to get our students in and get them out. And therefore, on our campus, once a student hits 100 units, they've lost their priority registration. So we need to be careful about not granting too many units.
Okay. Another showstopper.
Yeah,
Sorry.
College, it's just kind of obvious in a lot of cases that the units that for recruiting, the recruiters would say, well, not only are you going to earn money for college, but you're going to earn credit along the way. And then when we see credit for firearms or something, at some point, it's, only got a half hour with the student, and you come across most of these transcripts are a disservice to the students. They're units that are going to hurt them with financial aid, require them to declare a major sooner, and they're really not going to count at any school. So that's the biggest issue.
Okay, and I saw a hand back there, so let me go there and then I'll come over to you. Run, Mary Beth, run!
I think one of the biggest issues has to do with transferability to the four-year institutions. Cal States and UCs are kind of reluctant to take a lot of military credits. We take a lot from our institution at Coastline, but the Cal States and UCs are still far behind in that progress.
So you got to have cooperation at the four-year level.
Yeah, it kind of goes to this gentleman's point about the non-alignment of the experiential experience and the curriculum that we have. And the problem lies in the fact that when you can't match it up with curriculum on our campus, it ends up being elective credit. And a lot of our students don't need elective credit because they're taking enough coursework as part of their degree requirements that when you add up the general ed units plus the major requirements, they've already got enough to get a degree or to transfer. And so they don't need the extra credit. So.
Any other showstoppers? Does anybody remember the Phil Donahue show?
Where I'm at, Merced College, I get some that come over from Modesto or even Fresno City College, and they do their electives. The electives, theirs is different. They get 16 or something. We only give 10. So they might have gotten more from them and less from us, and then they're like, well, why didn't I get those?
So policy disconnect, like a transfer policy.
Exactly.
Okay. So, Michelle, summarize what we've got so far and see if there's another showstopper from anyone.
All right, so for those, I'm assuming you can hear me. I do teach spinning classes at Peterson Air Force Base. But I'm not going to slow our roll because our time is so limited. Dan's got his watch on me because I know how he is. So in terms of our summary of showstoppers, the number of units in terms of transfer potentially impacting any financial resources, whether it's financial aid, VA, TA, elemental P, whatever it is. And then also possibly losing their priority registration status based on the number of units of transfer and non-transfer. Military-specific credit recommendations, the alignment to current college curricula, and that what you perceive as false salesmanship on the part of the military recruiter saying, hey, join the military, get your education, here's all these credit recommendations. The transfer to 4 years and that collaboration piece, I was here in California 2 years ago. Was anybody else here with me a couple years ago? We had a lot of conversations about this, didn't we? And you're making tremendous progress. Is it magic? Probably not, but it's coming. The non-alignment of credit recommendations to elective credits or credit that is not needed. And then also the transfer policy disconnects between one community college to another community college. And then again, that kind of ties back into your 4 years.
So, any more before we move over to the ACE review? Or actually, the ACE overview? One more?
I just have a comment about one of them. Mark at Irvine Valley College. My understanding under the Student Success Act is that veterans will always have their priority registration. They're classified as one of the groups that have it, and they're not going to lose it because of the 100 units. No? We've asked the question, and now it's working back to us.
I'll post it, so at least
Yeah.
it's up there. We can investigate it.
Okay, now that we've broken a little ice, let's move on to a quick ACE overview, and then we'll get into the review. So whatever questions or comments you have now, let's save them and keep talking about them later.
See, we weren't prepared to do the whole recording thing. Our dog and pony show is not set up to like pass a mic and stand at Charlie Brown's teacher's podium. So we're going to apologize in advance that we're going to be throwing this mic at you because you want a rich resource. A couple housekeeping things and logistics. Michelle Spires, yes, I am a spouse of a retiree of the Air Force. It took us 22 years for him to finish his bachelor's. Ha-ha, we're done, yay. And then he rolled right into his master's and PMP and all sorts of good stuff. So before we move on, how many veterans do I have in the room with me today, and how many service members? How many of those of you are connected family members as well? I want to thank you for your service and for all of your contributions and things that you do as well, because if this were easy, we would not be convened here today, right? If this were easy and quick bada bing, bada boom, we wouldn't have to worry about this. So I am also going to say that I bring a bias to this because I am a spouse and I have spent close to 20 years working in higher education, mostly with adult learners and military students. And so I firmly believe what an individual learns is more important than when, where, and how the individual learned it. And therefore, we want to find ways to validate that, document it, and work with it. It's not always magic, and it's not always going to fit, but there's got to be something there. American Council on Education is at 1 DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. Michelle Spires is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So I do not live and work from the main office in DuPont Circle. I work from a regional jet, airport floors. I'm probably going to have to shovel my car out when I get back to the Springs, that sort of thing. Travel a lot. But ACE is built on leadership and advocacy, and there's a huge umbrella of our organization of all the different things that we're working with, doing. And we are a member institution that have multiple types of faces and types of institutions from the north, south, east, west, public, private, for-profit, not-for-profit. I'm just going to give you a little overview because, go ahead, Chris. We work underneath the Center for Education, Attainment, and Innovation. There's that guiding philosophy again, what an individual learned. You will be quizzed before you can leave the room today for your potty break. When we're feeling that this is a difficult, we're getting frustrated, and we're banging the mic against our head, we want to go back to that individual learner, to the panel we heard this morning. And this is what we're doing this for, right? So if we keep that in our focus and in our sights, we can march forward. Underneath our Center for Entertainment and Innovation, we have multiple units. I am the director of military programs. I am the one that is executing the contract by the Department of Defense to do these course and occupation reviews. Mary Beth is my colleague underneath college and university partnerships. We're going to get into a lot of that after the break and into the second session. We have a program, our veterans programs. When we're talking about the services, the needs, the faculty training, the how to work with PTSD and TBI in the classroom, we have a whole team of, small team, very small team, but we have a toolkit and resources to help colleges and universities benchmark best practices with one another. And then we also have a sister program that does corporate evaluations. So think about it, the FAA, NASA, they all have corporate training programs. Starbucks, I see some Starbucks cups in here. McDonald's, Hamburger University, Walt Disney, they have professional education and training, so we have a corporate program that can actually do the evaluations very similar to what we do in the military. Next slide. So, vet-friendly toolkit. Don't worry about flipping to the website. We're gonna rock and roll here because our time is short. There are some postcards on the table. How many of you have seen the toolkit online, have participated in the discussion boards? Ooh, extra credit for these guys. Somebody throw candy at them. See, Dolores, you're not alone. That's good. This is where you really, they're doing a lot of webinars. There's faculty portal areas. There's all sorts of rich resources that you can jump into. It's free and open. Take a look. Next slide. So back to evaluations, those military credits. Underneath the Center for Entertainment and Innovation, we are trying to do a couple of things. Evaluate the courses the occupations, and on our corporate program side, the examinations. We want to document these in databases and then work with the appropriate transcripting services. Those are really the 3 key focal points right now with our evaluation activities. Now, who knows, this is the quiz part, and by the way, don't get too comfortable because you will be moving later. Who knows when we started military evaluations? Dun, dun, dun. Yes, in the back. 1972. Who knows? Next date. What? 1792. Well, no, smarty pants. We'll give you credit. 1945. So a little before my time. The American Council on Education was actually formed in 1918 as the Emergency Council on Higher Education. The impact of the First World War, first GI Bill, things like that. This started to evolve where we were convening task forces and working with the Department of Defense and looking at training that occurred in the military and potential college credit recommendation. So 1954 is really when the first set of course exhibits really evolved, but you're close with that 70 date because in 1972, 74 is when we started our first occupation, the job evaluations. So courses started first, then along came the occupations. Half a point, partial credit. We are on a DoD contract, a Department of Defense contract that is managed by, who knows, anybody? Some of y'all came here 2 years ago. You don't remember? Come on, Dan. Dante's, Defense Activity for Non-Traditional Education Support. If you're not familiar with them, we'll make sure you get links and resources. There are tons of things out there. Dante's manages this contract, so we have pretty much a finite process in terms of how we conduct these reviews. It is not the American Council on Education that goes to each branch of service and says, you must have these courses evaluated. Each branch of service has a liaison who is then charged with ensuring through a formal centralized training and education command process, so we got all these little rules and requirements, to funnel up to us, these are the locations that need these courses reviewed or these occupations reviewed. So it's kind of a ground-up approach to us. So for some of you who are thinking, oh, these courses are too military specific, they may be, but we honor and respect that they are training to mission. They are not training and educating to college-level credit recommendations. Chris is going to emphasize that again. If he doesn't, I'll throw something at him because that's what's really important. These services are not trying to get college degrees. They're trying to train their service members for their missions. This DoD contract is a 3-year contract. So we just launched in fiscal year 2012. We'll wrap up in 2015. And October, I can tell you what we're doing between now and the end of September. We start our scheduling in May. So it's kind of a bit crazy. Go ahead to the next slide so they can kind of get a picture. So this is what fiscal year 2013 looked like, just some quick data. The Military Programs Evaluation Team, we are a team of 7. I'm the director. I have 3 associate directors, 2 senior program managers, and 1 program coordinator. We lead the reviews in the field. So we pretty much map our lives out. There's also only so much money in the budget. Now, for those of you who are veterans here, how many of you are Army veterans? Raise your hands. Come on, don't be shy. I have to say I'm sorry because you've had a really rough time with operational tempo for things clearly going on in the world. So your course reviews and your occupation reviews are behind. These size 8 boots right here have been working very closely with the Army to get them on their groove thing. So if many of you are working with those Army side and you're getting really frustrated because things are end dated and out of date, we know. We're working on it. So this just kind of paints a picture of our operational flow. Next slide. What I don't want to do is delay too long. I want you to hear from Chris about the rigor of the review process. Let's talk about some rules of engagement. We do want questions, so Chris will pause and take questions as you need to. We'll put things on the parking lot. We're going to have to use the microphone. The other thing is you can take copious notes if you want. If you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, raise your hand. Repeat after me. I promise I will not share this PowerPoint with anybody. I will not email it to anybody. And here's the reason. This is not going to be posted on the conference website. I'm sorry. 2 years ago when I was here, what happened is some of the slides were misinterpreted because they're not meant to be reviewed outside of this room with us. and it turned into a little snafu. So now there are no presentations where we'll hand out slides, but we'll give them to you if you bring us your email and your card at the end. And based on that promise, you won't forward and pass them. So don't stress about taking crazy notes. At the same time, Mary Beth and I were just talking, we'll put together a one-page resource, links, all sorts of things that you might want to have access to, and give that to the conference team so they can post that for you, okay? So with that, Chris.
Every time. Good afternoon, everyone. I have been with ACE for 5 years. I am a faculty member. I have actually worked with 3 different institutions. I've served as a department chair, which was really bad. Worse, I just served as a dean. That was really bad. I actually had hair down to my butt, but after that point, it didn't happen anymore. I have actually served as a curriculum director. One of the most important things I like to tell people, I was born in admissions when I started in higher education. So I know what it is to take to get a student in. And then when I went to the faculty side, I started to teach some of my colleagues what it takes to keep a student there. So I've been on both sides of the house. I enjoy that. Most people who used to know me back in my admission days, they do tell me that I went to the dark side by going to the faculty. I tell them I've actually one of those, Jedi Knights who are basically embracing everyone else at that point. But the review process is very important to me because sometimes I do hear from faculty members, from other colleagues around that they don't understand the process. The process is fairly simple once you get into it. So one of the things when both Mary Beth brought me in as a regional liaison to work here on the West Coast, since I'm actually serving a sentence in Yuma, Arizona. Blame that on my wife. We wanted to really get out the major parts of the review process, and one is the academic rigor. As Michelle said, there's no one at the headquarters or the motherships, as she calls it, making those decisions. We have teams of faculty members. I've led those teams. I've been taught by other national coordinators or field coordinators how to work with the teams, but also I have been the faculty reviewer just like those members are. So we know what the rigor of the process is. We understand the breadth and the depth of what we're looking for in curriculum because we've all, in this room, we've mostly all done curriculum review. We understand that process. And as our faculty reviewers, they have done the same thing as well. Go ahead, Mary. The review team basically is normally for, and we have different sides of ACE as far as the houses go. One side that Michelle mentioned was the credit side. The credit side teams are led by national coordinators. On the military side, there are 1 or 2 field coordinators who also take the teams out and direct those teams doing the reviews from that. But in either way, there's always a coordinator working with the team to help them get to that particular decisions that they're making on the curriculum. But it is a process based on consensus. And we sit together around the table, looking across each other in a room, and we make the decision on these courses. Now, do I sit back and make a decision on a course in geography or GIS systems? No, I have no basic understanding of that in any particular way, so I will not be making a decision on that. So all of our faculty members are grounded in the particular area that they are reviewing. They are based on, and you'll see later on in the slides, we have a form that we complete to become a faculty reviewer. Your CIP code, which is your classification of instructional program based on the Department of Ed, that CIP code is basically put into the database. And when we start to spin up a review, 120 days out or whatever else, those faculty members start to spin up in that database of who is able to review this particular area, this particular discipline from that standpoint. Go ahead, Mary. All of our faculty members are from across the country. We have some. We have a few actually from the WAS area as well, and actually I think NEAS we have a small little bit, but we have a number of faculty members from all of these areas. So we represent as a group pretty much all of the regional accredited bodies areas. So sometimes when I hear people say, well, our regional accreditor wouldn't allow us to do that, well, when we talk to some of the faculty members from this area, we've had that same discussion. Or we've actually talked to some of the members of those regional accredited bodies. That's not what they're saying. So we sit back and we find different things. Last fall, I was in Washington State, and I started a huge issue during the presentation, and I promise I won't do that here, where people were like, oh, no, our accredited body says this, they said that. So there was some infighting going on in the room because no one could get really and truly what the accredited body was really talking about. So the simplest thing I said was, why don't someone call them? And it got really quiet in the room. Are you crazy? We don't want to know we're doing something wrong. But that's how we kind of work it. But we do represent all of the regional accredited bodies. As a team coordinator, it is my job just to keep the team on focus, to make sure all the TNETs are being hit from expectations from ACE, but also what would I expect as a curriculum reviewer, as a department chair, as a dean. What would I expect if I'm sitting in a room full of faculty members and we're going through a curriculum review process for our campus? I'm looking at those same things that I'm looking at for the review process as well. I do take into concern what we're doing as far as working with the service branches or even with a corporate partner, but at the same time, we know really and truly what the basics are from that point, because when they hit the ground on one of our campuses, I really don't want those individuals, those service members, or anyone who's receiving credit to actually go to the next level class and fail out knowing that some way, somehow we missed something on that part there. So we have the subject matter experts, and when we're doing reviews where we're doing a lot of examinations, we normally have 1 or 2 psychometricians who are actually on the team as well, making sure that the validity is set there from that point. When I was when we were in Miami not too long ago doing the faculty development session, it was really funny when we talked to some of the faculty members when they developed some of their department exams. We actually said, did you guys go across the street to talk to anybody in your statistics department or anything else to make sure that there was a level of validity there? And they all just said, no, we never did. And so when we talk about collaboration, sometimes that collaboration comes within our own institutions and campus as well when we're creating those exams. Hey, Beth. So again, the role of the faculty member, we want them to be grounded in the current curriculum standards, which is why we request that they have taught whatever course or particular discipline area they've taught in the last 3 years. So we have some people who are deans, VPs, who have not been in the classroom for 10, 15 years, but they've directed those departments. Sometimes we cannot use them because they have not been in the classroom. And that's a sore subject once in a while because they're leading those departments, and it's okay for that, but at the same time, when's the last time you were in the classroom you actually understand that and know that? The content area expert, that's what we really want. And I know there was a comment over here, sir, and I think you made it about sometimes a disservice when you look at some of those credit recommendations that's made. We try to bridge that gap together as much as we possibly can. And sometimes that bridge does not connect, and we have to let the service members know that. We also let the corporate clients know that. So as I get later on today, not everything receives a credit recommendation. There are a number that are turned down doing some of our reviews and so forth, and there are a lot of different reasons why from that, but sometimes we just can't make that connection, but that's the nature of the beast. Also, too, at last count, we have 4,372 colleges and campuses throughout the country. Can we actually make sure everybody has that program, everybody has that one particular area? No, it's not, and even with the faculty members, it'd be great if we can actually bring in one faculty member from all of those campuses to make that consistent decision, but it wouldn't happen for us from that. You want
We had a handout here.
Yeah, I guess that just kind of begs a question for me, Chris.
Yeah.
And it's great that you guys are here in California, because how many of the vets end up in higher education in California? On the GI Bill, 50%? 40%?
It's California, it's Colorado, it's
A third?
Texas.
Yeah, I mean, we have well more than our
Virginia.
representational share.
Okay, well, that's great. I mean, and if you look at the California community colleges, by our Title V, we all have humanities, natural science, social science requirements. And I guess we're not really taking to task what giving whether a course is relevant, as far deserves a unit or not. And for lack of a better example, I mean, for me to allow a student to take 30 PE units is really irresponsible for me, because it doesn't really apply to a major. So for me, the military in this case is being irresponsible in giving all these units, and then I'm not sure how it's presented, but
We're gonna get there.
okay, well, great. I hope so, because it really begs the question. To me, it's the elephant in the room right now, and for me at least.
All right, we're gonna take that elephant and rock on. Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, switch from that point. We are guided by the Evaluator's Handbook. This information is available online. I have not seen this link down at any particular time that I've been associated with ACE. So what we do is, one, we use this to clarify the review process. So as a faculty member, once hopefully you've actually read the handbook before you fill out the form. But even if not that point, once you fill out the form and complete it, we're requesting that you read and look at this. And when you're selected for review, when your name spins up, and if you are a first-time reviewer or maybe a second-time reviewer, we remind you of this link for the handbook from there. but we want to demystify any of the expectations or so from that point. So one, we're not a bunch of vets coming out, because not all the faculty reviewers are vets, so we're not coming out with our heart out saying, you know what, I know what it was like when I was a vet and I got those 30 PE credits, we're just going to give them this credit. No, that does not work at all in that process from there. So we basically take all those expectations out from there. We have the tools and the resources available for the evaluators. We have different tips as well, too. Some just even how to hail a taxi once in a while when you get in, or what happens if your flight's late. But there's a lot of information here. And again, this is always up. Anyone can read it. You don't have to be an evaluator to look at it and know it. So, within the review process, when we're talking about courses, because we review both courses, occupations, and exams. So I'm going to give a brief overview of each one. For the reviewers' work, what we look at is we look at a course syllabus, pretty much the same thing that we would see on our college campuses within the curriculum review process. We look at what textbooks are located there for both for the student and instructor. We look at both sides. Assessment methods, we'll get into a little deeper later on, but there has to be some level of assessment methods that is connected with that course syllabus. We look at, again, the student and instructor guides, any projects, any hands-on materials they're doing, and we also look at instructor qualifications, but giving a caveat on that. On the military side, we really do not touch the instructor qualifications because they have their own rank and file system, their own promotion system. They actually have some of, and I have to say this, they do a lot better job than mentoring their faculty members and training their faculty members than I've actually seen in higher education. And I've been in higher education going on 20 years now. I've done a lot of work on the accreditation side. I've been to a lot of different campuses. And whenever I go to a military outpost and they're showing some of the stuff that they do to get their instructors ready, I'm like, wow, I wish I could take this back home with me, but knowing that she would get me if I put it in my bag as I walked out. But I would love to do it.
Question coming in. Yeah. Mike.
Tying into the course review process, now let's say that for Army, is the course the same from each base, or would it be, is there a common course outline, or? Because you said course syllabus. Usually for us, we go with the course outline as opposed to the course syllabus, which is for the individual faculty member.
Oh, this is bad.
We'll get it by the end of the
No, definitely. Well, one, that depends on the branch that we're with, so within the Army from there. So again, if we're looking at infantry school, pretty much it's going to be the same across the board for infantry school. But sometimes it actually depends on what specific things going on in that area at that installation or that schoolhouse. So there is a schoolhouse where training will be filtered through. So within the Navy, I can give an example. They have their A school, their B schools, and everything else. So that process goes from there. So everyone who's familiar with San Diego for minesweeping school, which is surface warfare, they're all funneled through that one school for surface warfare in San Diego. From the
If I can elaborate, Dan, not to throw you off, but here's the thing. Every branch of service that we're working with exception of the Air Force, because Air Force has their own regionally accredited community college, right? However, we do evaluate Air Force courses that are not directly aligned. They're officer courses and correspondence courses. But for the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Coast Guard, there's a centralized training command. The Army is centralized. Every training document is for all schoolhouses. So if there's a course that's delivered at Fort Bliss, Fort Bragg, Fort Lost in the Woods in the middle of nowhere, it's the same curriculum. For the Navy, that's why you'll see the schoolhouse training locations, because it is specified underneath the training command and who is authorized to deliver that curriculum. So we're very, very, very fastidious on the administrative side of things to detail out. We're doing that detail work for you. Okay?
And the last part of the course review is, again, we will go through all particular materials from that point. We would then hop over to our occupational reviews. These reviews are actually assessment of a particular military occupation. So given the MOS, given the particular job field that service member is in, it is actually focused on basically what the expectations of the job is, what they need to do. We look at, as a team, we look at and validate what those skills are needed for the job. So not focusing totally on what they've learned in, say, A school, if you're talking about surface warfare coming to that point. And then if you're on the minesweeper, or if you're on a submarine, or if you're on a destroyer, we don't look at that particular sense of that point. We look at the particular job or so that they're actually doing. So if you're a sonar operator, it's going to be totally different from the guy who's actually working weapons. Even though they have to work together and they should know each other's job, we're looking at that sonar individual more than the weapons person or the countermeasures person from that, which are three-person jobs. Navy has a lot of redundant systems or so from that point, which is confusing in some ways. From that. So we look at those abilities, and we also go by their pay grade as well too. So if you're familiar with the military pay structure, the E1 grades all the way up to E9s from that point on the illicit branch area, there's specific type of responsibilities that are connected with each one of those pay grades as we go through from there. Sometimes funny things when we're doing our occupational reviews, because our occupational reviews are actually interviews. We interview individuals, at least 5 individuals. Correct, Michelle? Is it 5? Or 6? Okay, so we'll have those individuals, we break them down by pay grade, and so we'll have a certain number by the pay grade that would actually come in and go, and as we move, we'll have an E1 or E2 tell us that this is actually what they do, but then when we get to an E9, if you can imagine the E9 up here on this level, that E9 sometimes is telling us they're doing the same thing that the E1 person would do, which we really know we wouldn't see an E9 mopping the floor. We wouldn't see too many E9s actually stand and watch, so we see those different things there. But we look at the same materials. We look at their occupational manuals. We look at the technical guides, any training individuals, things they've done. We look at any promotion examinations that they have to go through, actually to carry them through with that occupational review. Okay. Okay. And the last one I would talk about, which is actually on our corporate side, which is our process of looking at examinations. This is when we bring in both a team and psychometrician from that. We look at, again, the program objectives, what we're looking at. All the subject matter experts are in on the team. Training, testing methods. We look at the preparations for those. We look at the reliability and validity on those areas, the grading methods, and we've also thrown in the use of proctors and updating the procedures so from that point. So we also go with identification, proper identification, security in those particular areas for the testing from that. And again, this is only really on our credit review side. We are actually up to, is it 32? CLEP exams. We're up to 32 CLEP exams from this point through the College Board that we've actually gone through and kind of kissed off within that review process from there. Okay.
And the prometric, which used to be DSST or Dante, those are 2 exams, 2 national exams that are important for us to think about with the military, with service members and veterans, because they have the opportunity to do that while they're in the service, do it for free, and pass those tests and get some credit when they come out of the military and go back to school.
Cool. And so just to give you an idea, this is what an average review room looks like. You can see here we have the boxes. Most of those boxes represent at least one, maybe every 2 boxes or so represents a course from that. Sometimes we've actually moved up in technology with some of the areas. We actually do them electronically where everything is on a laptop or on a computer system for us, but that just depends on the security or actually the installation that we're at. Just one course here. This is actually Mike, one of our faculty members. I've worked with Mike before because we both do the munitions area from that. So this is an ordnance course for Mike. So this is all one course. Here, can you imagine if we told our students to carry that many books in a term? They'll kill us. But this is just actually one course that's prep for a review from this process. As I mentioned, we're in a consensus process. So on the military side, there are 3 reviewers to every course, primary, second, and third reader. But it doesn't matter which reader you are, you still have to do the same thing that first individual does on the reading. And we do come to consensus on that from there. So again, when we get to the recommendation process, we look at it in semester unit hours. I know sometimes people want to convert over to the quarter hours from that, but we do them in semester hours. And as I mentioned before, there's a number of times where we cannot make any level of recommendation from that point. The scope is too limited. It's too company or military specific for a particular group. So you like to give credit for someone who's using a shoulder fire weapon. It's not there. It can't happen. We can't do it. And also it's just not comparable to anything we see on the college level campus around. This is the one that hurts the most sometimes because you'll see a really great course put together, outlined, organized, but the assessment is nowhere on the level that the course is written. And we see that sometimes as well too. And again, this is the meat of that course there when we look at that assessment and make sure it's right on the proper level. And so sometimes it really does hurt on that standpoint, but then you just have to say no from there on that credit recommendation. This is our criteria. This is very familiar to most of you if you look at it. Sometimes on different campuses we have a different name. Content, we want to look at that content of the course, what's there and what's available. The learning outcomes, do the learning outcomes actually go with that content? So we actually see we're going around the circle now. We're looking at the content as well. What is the breadth and the depth of that content? Are those learning outcomes hitting the breadth and depth of these particular areas here? Level of difficulty. Is it hitting the learning outcomes? Are we at the lower end of Bloom's when we're talking about this course here, or are we at the higher end of that? As we go around, how can we apply it to college campuses? So if I think about those 4,372 campuses, how many of those might actually have a course like that or something similar to that? So then that's where having that diversity within our faculty review team really works out and helps from there. And again, I go back to the level of assessments. So assessments meet learning outcomes. Those assessments meet the level of difficulty. You can have a great course here. I have assessment, and then all they're doing is true-false questions, 20 of them, 30 of them. It doesn't work from that point. Or is there a practical exercise part that only focuses on, what I would like to say, where they really focus on the lower end of a course where I'm more talking to you, telling you, defining things, than you actually doing hands-on from that point. So, faculty focus, actually, I kind of just went through that for this part. Our credit recommendations, I actually start down here. We're looking at either vocational or credit level, certificate level. We go up to lower division associates. We can go up to the upper division baccalaureate degree, or we can go to graduate. I always say this is like the mainstay from that where we look at it. But one of the true things we have to look at here on the credit recommendation level that I always talk about is that it doesn't matter what kind of degree the learner already has. So this is on the case of some of our officers who are taking courses. If the course is written on a lower division level or upper division level, that's the level of credit they receive. So they can be all officers, already have their bachelor's degree. Guess what? It doesn't automatically jump up to graduate level from that point. So again, we base it on those learning outcomes that evaluate the criteria we just talked about on the last slide.
All right, okay. I'm going to have to stop us here because we have a time crunch. We started late.
Okay.
So we're going to come back to this. If you're coming, anybody that's new walking in is going to miss all of this first part. We're going to continue to talk about this. We're going to get hands-on. We're going to start moving tables. We're going to start doing a little bit more than just hear us roar, as Katy Perry would say. So take a quick 5-7 minute bio break. We started late. I'd like to get us back on track. Come back into the room, and then we're going to pick right up from here like we never took a bio break and move forward.